What up, my fellow Survivor lovers? Welcome to the Survivor Historian, part of the Challenge Historian podcast feed. I am your host, Jacob Hollaball, and with me, as he is every week, is the one and only, the great and powerful Tony Lance. Tony, how are we doing today?
Fantastic. It is Friday, and we have survived the week.
We have week one of 2 weeks of transition, crazy reality television time. Lots and lots going on as
Yes.
we have a finale air last night, and technically the first episode of the new challenge season air earlier this week, even though they didn't tell anyone that until like an hour before. Shout out to Scott Yeager for being the only person with screeners who was nice enough to lots of people in the community listen to me. I'll let them know that this is a real episode. So yeah, lots of challenge stuff going on, but of course we are not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about Survivor, which aired episode 4 of season 45 tonight, had the big tribe swap, had lots of cool new dynamics, lots and lots to talk about. Before we dive into it, quick programming notes on all of those challenge related things we just referenced. My recap of the finale of Challenge USA 2, shout out to Survivor alums, now 4 for 4 on the Challenge USA with Chris and Desi bringing home the win. My recap of that is up. You will see it as the previous episode in this feed. Tony, you are talking tomorrow morning Challenge USA, and that'll be up on Challenge Fandom over the weekend, correct?
Yeah, over the weekend or like super early next week, before the next episode would traditionally air.
Yes, wonderful. So check out those if you're challenge watchers as well. I've also got my preview up of Challenge 39, and we'll of course be covering that Wednesday nights as that starts airing next week. And again, if you are someone who watches the challenge and you're not sure that whatever I just referenced like 90 seconds ago, the launch episode, premiere episode, preview episode, episode 0, whatever the hell they want to call it, it's a real episode and you need to watch it. So if you missed that, hopefully you record the show on YouTube like I do, or TiVo or something, or I don't know if you go to mtv.com, if you could watch it with the cable login. Look it up. If you're a challenge person, you should go watch that. It's going to be very important and apparent that you didn't watch it when episode 1 opens with all of them sleeping in the arena and you're like, what the hell is going on? So that's what's coming up on those podcasts in the future. As for tonight, we're sticking to our regular agenda. Episode 4, full coverage, front to back, walk through the episode, anything of importance, anything that piqued our interest, we will discuss. Then we'll hand out some awards, update our power rankings, and make any predictions or wishes for next week or the rest of the season. Tony, are you ready to go?
I am ready.
All right, then let's dive in. We will skip right over the very brief 30 seconds of Sean playing nice with Lulu because it ultimately does not matter in a lot of different ways. We go basically immediately to the swap, which they walk up on the beach and it looks like that it might be a challenge of sorts, which I always find fun that they have it set up to try to, even though they then have the very staged Brando, what point of the game do you feel like we're at? Feels like a merge or it's tribe swap, Jeff. You're right. That felt really staged to me, but I do appreciate that they tried to make it look like it's a challenge, but we know because on the next week on, we see that it's a tribe swap, and also they're doing this 45 seconds into the episode. So we assume they're probably not just at a reward challenge already. It is a tribe swap. And before we talk about the new teams, question for you, Tony, that I heard going around some other podcasts and the Twitter sphere this week. What is the best situation to end up in a tribe swap? What if you were on this show, what's your preferred place to end up? Is it a situation like a Kaleb ends up in here or a Sean ends up in here where you're on the total bottom, you're the lone person from your tribe? Is it where the Belo and Reba 4 end up, where we're all together, or do you want to be in a mix? What's your preference holistically, looking at just not even in reference to these particular teams, but if you were there, what type of tribe do you want to end up in?
I would want either mostly my group, even if it's just one more than they have. If it's a 5 and it's me 3, them 2, I'm cool with that. But also to be that swing vote, where Emily is, it's important to be in that position. But like she mentioned, you can very easily become the target because it's I don't want to take shots at you yet. I don't want to take shots at you yet. Why don't we get that person? They don't have anybody. But realistically, I would say 9 times out of 10, that person is going to end up the swing vote more so than the target. And that's kind of a cool place to find yourself, because you know that if you get back to your tribe, presumably you're going to be able to kind of make those inroads again. However, you have a couple extra people with you.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you. And obviously all of this, it's completely dependent on the relationships of the people and their spot in the game. It isn't, you can't just definitively say one way or the other that's how it's going to be. But I agree with you, and you're in agreement with the great Tyson Apostle, who I was listening to part of his podcast, and they asked this question as well, and I liked his answer of, you do want to be where Emily ends up, of the ideal place isn't the one person but with 4 from the other tribe, like Belo and Reba have on the new Lulu and Reba, but is to be the solo person on a split that otherwise split between the other teams is the perfect place, because like you said, 9 out of 10 times, it depends on the dynamics of the group and everything else, but your best chances just in a vacuum are to be the obvious swing vote between other mixtures of people, versus where it could go either way, as we see it starting to maybe go either way with what we end up here with Lulu or Reba, where it's 4 and 1. And it's like, if there's cracks in those 4 already, or there was someone in that 4 ready to create some cracks, great, you can become the swing as the solo person out. But if there isn't, or it's still early enough in the game, and this is still very early in the game, only 3 people have gone home, then where the tribes are like, it's still kind of the port of the game where you should maybe take the easy road, and no one's really given us a reason to like break trust in our group, and no one has broken trust. So even if I really want someone from my original tribe out, do I want to be the first one to take a shot at my own original tribe? That's probably not a good place to be. No. So I'm with you. I think the best place you can be is solo, away from your tribe, so that you don't have any friction with them if you do get to emerge and are back with them, but in a place where you're the obvious swing between 2 different groups that you've ended up with, which is where Emily ends up. We get Belo now as the split tribe, Emily plus Drew in Austin on one side from original Reba, and they are with who's their Belo
Brando
members?
And Kendra.
Yes, Brando and Kendra, who we continue to get like no screen time with at all. They're still the 2, Belo kind of as a whole was, but now they become the 2 that I feel like I still don't really know them much at all, especially Brando. And then Reba is now just Sean plus the 4 Reba original folks, Julie, Sifu, J Maya, and D. And then Lulu is now Kaleb plus original Belo. And so it was an interesting non-mix up mix, really. It was almost, they kind of just divided Lulu up more or less. Thoughts on how the new teams ended up, the pairing, any pairings that stand out, anything you were really happy about as far as who ended up together, or really bummed about who ended up together?
I was sad that Emily and Kaleb didn't end up together, because I liked that dynamic, but I'm also very glad that they didn't end up together, because they would have immediately been targeted because of how close they are, especially in the random dynamics that we got. It was nice. It's one of those things where like there are a couple ones where I wish it would have gone one way, but I'm still happy that it's this way. So like with Drew and Austin, I would have loved to see, like we talked about, have one guy and one girl from that foursome end up on groups together, but instead we got the 2 girls and the 2 guys. But they're sort of like the dynamic duo. They're kind of chill. They know what they're doing. Yeah, they're super fun to watch. But I'm also happy that Bruce and Katurah stayed together.
Yeah, Bruce and Katurah staying together definitely was and we didn't get Emily with Bruce, which would have been perfect if all 3 of them, because Katurah throughout the episode is looking for an ally in her anti-Bruce agenda, which we will get to later. And Emily was definitely, she would have pulled Emily in right away. So we've got the new tribes. It's very interesting. I mean, I guess I don't know what probabilities would say, but it seemed at first glance, it was like, whoa, okay, that like 2 of the tribes really didn't change. Like, okay, that's kind of crazy. But then when you actually think about they're, splitting into 3 groups of 5 like this, it actually makes sense that it ends up this way. And so let's turn our attention to these new tribes and how they interacted on their first couple days together. We'll start with Lulu and talk Lulu day. I believe it's day 8 and 9. The
I believe so, yeah.
immunity eventual immunity challenges on day 9. So yeah, day 8 and 9, everything pre immunity for Lulu here. And the first moment that we have to talk about, speaking of Katurah's anti-Bruce agenda, an interesting moment of gameplay. Love to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah.
Kaleb starts filling them in on his, different things that have happened on his tribe, and Bruce asks him about Brandon, who Bruce had met on the first journey of the season, right at the very, very beginning. If we remember, Katurah wanted to go on that, and Bruce did all of the dancing and all the shenanigans when he decided / was chosen to go on that. And before Kaleb can say anything or Bruce can respond to anything, Katurah just was like, no, hold on, Bruce. Kaleb, can you explain in detail how what first time lawyer came out from her, by the way?
Yeah.
No one knows she's a lawyer yet, but was like, could you please explain to the jury here in detail what Brandon told you about that fateful day? Everything you know. Don't skip a thing, please. And Bruce, do not talk during this explanation. And he passed the fact check, which was
Yep.
but it was a fact check. It was an in the moment
totally.
like, we're gonna fact check you, Bruce. And she was not hiding what was happening at all.
No.
What did you think about this decision in gameplay?
I thought it was amazing. Like, as far as just watching it play out, I actually also wrote Katurah doing some lawyering. So I mean, like, the how just direct she was is very telling. But the other thing is, like, it only works if Brandon told his tribe the truth. Because if Brandon lies and then Kaleb tells him exactly what Brandon said, but it's not what Bruce said, then that doesn't mean that Bruce was untrue with what he said. It could just be that Brandon also lied. I appreciate I appreciate the move. Like, I appreciate that way of being able to fact check Bruce without fact checking Bruce. I also did, I have to mention, I liked how supportive they were of Bruce when when they all realized that he was on Tika, and they gave him that moment and just like let him chill, let him sit in it, and then they did their big like, holy crap, we made it, which was nice.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought when that happened. I hadn't even put together like,
no, me neither.
Oh, like he hasn't been on the beach where it happened yet, though, and everything, and that like because they're obviously in the same place that he would be. Yeah, that was a pretty touching moment. I thought they all handled it the correct way. But yeah, I wish Brandon would have lied to them, or just like Kaleb's got a damn good memory for someone who's been starving for 8 days, because he remembers it all perfectly. Because it would have been amazing if Bruce is like, wait a minute, that's not what happened. And Katurah and everyone else is like, oh, is it, Bruce? That's not what happened. He's like, no, like for real, you were lied to, bro. Like that's not what happened. And no one would have believed him because she at this point doesn't want to believe him, wants a reason to go at him. And everyone there doesn't just want, they have a reason to want to work with Kaleb. They all want to work with Kaleb, which was kind of the reverse of what I anticipated them, given I know they weren't there to be the ones that Reba interacted with Kaleb and had the whole like, that guy's a salesman kind of thing going on and had their guard up. Belo didn't have that. They'd just seen him do really well in challenges so far and be like, okay, like he's cool and nice and whatever. They all want to work with Kaleb. But of all of them, they kind of all have a conversation at some point, either in a group or one-on-one with them. But the one that seems to make the most inroads and seems to have the most legitimate connection that we see is Jake. The two of them have a little walk together. And I thought Jake played this moment really well, where I always want a little bit more honesty and tepidness from players in Survivor, of like, just because we're walking and having a conversation, like, 50% of the time people are lying if at the end of this we always have to just say, so we're working together, we're like number ones. Like, I like that Jake approached it with like, he paraphrased basically what he said was, he was like, I like you, everything is good between us right now, I am not locking in that like we're boys, we're voting together, whatever. I'm also not locking in that I'm like going against you. I'm openly telling you, I don't really, not me and Bruce are kind of tight, but also like I would vote for him if I had to. And that so far I like you, and like, let's keep working on it. And maybe we get to a point where I will lock you in as like my top person. You're on your way there. but he doesn't do that. Do you see this bond lasting? And do you have agreement, disagreement with my take on Jake having good gameplay of like, we don't need to do anything too serious other than just say we like each other and want to give each other info?
I think that, like, I agree that it was really well done. It just depends on how the next couple of days go. So I think that it's a great move if he continues to play on like a Belo beach where nobody goes to tribal. But I think that if they lose and they go to tribal and then Jake starts to have that conversation, then that's going to put the thought in Kaleb's mind of, is he talking to me because we now need to talk and we're just solidifying what we had already discussed? Or is he only talking to me now because he's still not sure about me, but he knows that he can probably get my vote? Versus someone like we'll see later with like Katurah, where she came up and she's like, look, here's the deal. I'm with you. This is what we can do. So there's two different ways that you can handle it, and neither one is like right or wrong. But I feel that the best way to look at like Lulu and Reba is like Belo gained a player. They gained Kaleb as part of their tribe. Reba gained a roommate until they lose. Like, there was no inroads for Sean. Like, he had nothing to do. But with Lulu, they actually had that opportunity where there's so many different ways that Kaleb can integrate himself into the actual tribe, not just with one individual person.
Yeah, I like that. I'm with that. Well, Jake better get to moving on it quick because his only other potential number one in the game is he thinks is Bruce. And Bruce doesn't think Jake's his number one. He thinks
Nope.
Kelly is his number one. And Kelly thinks not a lot of that, but as I put in our notes, she
Yeah.
basically shrugs her shoulders about
Yeah.
the whole idea of being Bruce's number one. But to Bruce's face, she more or less smiles. I don't think that convincingly, but it doesn't seem to phase Bruce.
No.
Maybe they just caught the right moment on camera and showed it to us. But I don't think she was convincing and like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, like, okay, yeah, we're
I
working
also
together.
appreciate that you're here.
Yeah. So that's interesting that everyone is kind of maybe is actually on the outs with Bruce for real of these four.
Yeah.
But obviously the one we've already talked about here and in past episodes that is 100% on the outs and wants to be on the outs and wants to get out Bruce is Katurah, who has the final conversation with Kaleb. And I wrote in my notes that while I've been on her side in the like Bruce is kind of doing a lot and I could see if Bruce was getting a little annoying on the beach for multiple different reasons, it does seem like Bruce maybe has broken her because the confessional montage of her clearly more or less unprompted from production, like they prompt you with questions, but not like for 8 or 9 responses in a row. And they have a pretty convincing montage of her just like, God, Bruce, this, Bruce, that. Oh my God, Bruce. Oh, I can't stand it. We got to get about this, that, and the other. And I was like, I'm still on your team. If I had to vote for one of you to stay on a tribe, I'm voting for you to stay and him to go. But it seems like he's gotten to you to the point of like, you might be a little bit broken because you're really wrapped up. Like you need him to go for your own survival in the game, not because he's going to vote you out, but because you're too hyper focused on this thing. How do you
Her tweet
feel
was
about...
fantastic too. Did you see her tweet about it?
I didn't know.
So she was basically like, if you're going to say something about one of your cast members, rest assured that production will run it until the wheels fall off. And I was like, yeah, they definitely have.
They have, but that montage was all different things. So
It
yes,
was.
it very well can, it always is editing tricks of whatever. Like that could be,
Yeah.
they make her sit in the same place and she's already wearing the same clothes because they're wearing the same clothes every day or whatever. And maybe those were 9 things she said across the first 8 days or the last 3 or 4 days. And again, they're prompted by they're getting asked questions in those moments. Right. But regardless, if you're asked 3 or 4 questions in a row about him, at some point you're allowed to be like, I think we've covered that, or like, yeah, I don't know, I'm targeting him, I guess, but like, Is there anything else you want to talk about? I don't know. Maybe you're not allowed. Maybe they're like, we're gonna kick you off this island if you don't give us what we want. I don't think
we're
they do
gonna
that though.
we're gonna keep changing the question until you answer it. No, like I understand, especially in that scenario, like when you're on an island with a set number of people, especially potentially for her, where you get to a swap
Yeah.
and you know a swap is happening. Everybody throws their buffs down in front of them. You get a new one, you open it up, and you look over, and oh good, Bruce is on my tribe again.
And he's
Like,
high-fiving and hugging you about it. And you're like, God damn it. Yeah,
like
that's
I'm
tough.
I'm glad that we're moving to a new location. Oh good, you are coming with me. And that could have been the matter of just like, this is my moment to get away, take a moment to breathe, and regroup before we hit the merge, and I got to deal with him again.
Yeah.
But instead, he's along for that ride.
Well, it's the big in for Kaleb for sure, because I think
Oh
they
yeah,
all would have went into it kind of wanting to work with him anyways and wanting to keep
yep,
him around for tribe strength and the challenges as we're going to see. But I do think it's, it's his dream ending up as the solo person on that situation to be like,
yeah,
please let two of these there be friction amongst this tribe. And there's not just friction. They could probably start a
no,
fire with
oh
they don't
yeah,
need the flint. They eventually
no,
finally get the flint, but they probably could have got that fire started pre-immunity challenge just with the friction between those two individuals. Let's move to Belo. So new Belo. I did catch that you were saying Nulu, and I really like
yes.
that. That's very good. Very, very good. Do you have is there a new name for Belo or is it just still Belo?
It's still Bello. I might find something,
Okay, by
but
the end of the episode, we'll workshop.
I struck rich with Nulu, so I was like, I'm gonna stick with that one.
Yeah, only need one a week. We're good.
Yep.
That you met the quota and exceeded all expectations. So Bello, which again is now Austin Drew on one side, Emily in the middle, and Brando and Kendra on the other side, starts with Emily giving the full, hey, you guys will get to watch this eventually, but if you want to know what happened this season up till now, because you haven't really been a part of it, here you go. Here's the story of Lulu, and tells all. Is it? It's pretty hard to say it's good or bad strategy. It kind of seems not even like, given the situation and how it's just been them going to tribal 3 times in a row. There isn't
Yeah.
really, I don't see much incentive for not telling them everything about your
No.
tribe, basically, beyond other than she doesn't say like me and Kaleb are super tight, so she keeps the
Right.
only maybe info that is important in any way, but otherwise is like, it would ingratiate me to like sit around the fire here, which is cool that you guys got fire. That's dope. Haven't seen that yet. And like just be able to talk and comfortably for an hour by just telling you what has happened. Is there any good or bad strategy in this in your opinion, or is it basically just like it's kind of the position she's in? It I just don't see it as much. It can't do any harm really.
Well, yeah. I mean, right now the thing with Emily is basically that the people that she's telling they're the people that have continually made alliances based off the fact that somebody tells them everything. Like Drew and
He
Austin,
doesn't know
the
this yet,
reason,
but yeah, these
yeah,
people are very quick to be like, you tell me one thing, we're besties. Like
yeah,
we're in, lock it in.
BFF 4L. Yeah, like the fact that she was telling them everything while she was telling them, I looked at Sarah and I was like, Drew and Austin are gonna love that she's telling them things. And sure enough, they were just like, we thought she was this mean lady, but like she's super dope and really chill, and we should totally ride with her. And like it was so great for Emily, and I agree. There's not much that she needed to hide because really the people that she's talking about are no longer in this game because she's talking about Lulu, who have been decimated and sort of divvied up. Um, I mean, if you're looking at the grand scheme of things, it sort of sucks because the way that they all get split, no matter what happens, a Lulu still goes to tribal council. Um, so, so they didn't totally escape. They just sort of diversified.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it was in her best interest to kind of do a summary. And I'm sure she left some stuff out, but she put in this. I think one of the things that she did that was really smart was she put a lot of the heat on Sabaya, who can't counter it at any point. And she also was really smart in just taking everything that she's learned from being on Lulu and using it to her advantage on Belo to ingratiate herself to the other people. And I think she did it really well. Like, I'm over the past 4 episodes, like, I am really high on Emily's supply.
Yeah, I do. I did, and I literally wrote in my notes during this moment of the episode, of like, I do miss that one moment where we thought we had a villain, and I was really excited
I
about it.
know.
And I'm hopeful. That was the main reason. I was like, damn it, if she was with Bruce, she'd at least still maybe, although she would probably go up to him and be like, the best thing to do for my game is to apologize and be like,
Yeah.
that was so uncalled for. I don't know what got over me. But so yeah, I do miss villain era Emily for sure. If
Yep.
someone else could fill that role, that would be really appreciated over
We could get
here.
accidental villain Sifu.
We'll get to him in a moment. I don't know what Sifu is doing.
Me neither.
Not a lot by the looks of it.
Every
Which
time.
interesting choice. I do think that Emily, the one benefit that can come of it is she can, and as you said, she does. The one little part we hear is that she does say like Sabaya was in
Yeah.
charge, and then this thing happened with her idol, and we don't hear the whole conversation, but I'm guessing she doesn't paint it in a way like I pulled this big move. It was like
No.
Sabaya was in charge and just made this like bad call, and all of us
Yeah.
were like, well, she has an idol, and like, okay. And so she's basically, by telling this whole story, she's able to paint herself as like, I'm not a threat, just so you guys know.
Yeah.
Like, I one person quit or else I wouldn't have been here. And then another person was so bad at the challenges they kept me again. And then the like one person became too big of a threat and had an idol, and like, yeah. So like, I'm just kind of
Yeah.
here. Like, don't be worried about me. I'm just a vote. Who wants me to vote with them? I'm just looking for friends, and kind of
Yeah.
paints herself that way, which at this early stage of the game, it is still very like this one. I could never see a world where on a jury, one of these four people was on a jury and they were like, well, Emily, you didn't do shit. Like, you remember when you told us that like you were lucky to be here because someone quit? Like, it'll be way too far in the past if that ever came up. So I only think it can help her. Both sides want her, obviously, but Austin and Drew are the first to like really make it happen, have the conversation with her. She is, this is the one spot where I was like, I totally understand the feelings and why, given the progression of the 9 days out here, you are feeling the way you are.
Yeah.
But you might want to try to lock it in a little bit, because she, as they even start getting into sentences that are going to end with them saying they want to work together, she is like brimming with excitement and joy and like borderline like shaking. She like jumps and hugs them and everything. She's like crying a little bit, and she's just so happy to like be a part of something. And I totally get it, but I would, and I bet she even looking at it as, kind of analytical as she can be, would be like, yeah, I probably should have tried to find a way to like tamper it down a little bit, but like she just can't. She can't help herself. She's so excited to be a part of a group, and especially, I'm reading this into it, and it may be wrong of me to read this into it, but not only is she a part of the group, but like Austin and Drew are like the kind of college bro dudes on here, and for them to be the ones being like, we really want you to be like a part of our little trio, given what the little we know maybe about Emily's like social life and stuff, maybe she's like, I've never had like guys like you be like, what do you want to like be buddies and like hang out? Like, again, it's kind of like a survivor thing of like new pairings that might not happen in the world or whatever, that on a beach, like you're like, we actually just view each other as other people and have conversations and realize that we all kind of have reasons to like each other and everything. So I think there was maybe a little of that in there too. She's like, wait a minute, you guys, of all the people out here, you two, like, okay, cool. Like, this is amazing. What do you think about this trio? And do you trust this trio? And if they ever were to come back together, are D and Julie, I mean, Austin and Drew were already a little skeptical of the other half of their quartet, and now they've added a member to their trio instead. It seems like they've ditched the quartet, even if they were to come back and emerge or something.
Drew did mention that, like, he did state that it was him and Austin, and then the rest of the alliance was Julie and Dee, and then hopefully they would be able to make Emily their fifth. So in that sense, I still feel like there's still thinking that they could go with Julie and Dee if they're still around by the time that we get to emerge. Um, I think that's a really good dynamic. Emily, Andrew, and Austin. I think that amongst the three of them, they'll be able to sort of keep each other in check. They kind of they even each other out. Anywhere there's some gaps, they're able to kind of fill all those in collectively. And I think that it'll play out really well. I going back to Tyson as like talking about merges and stuff like that. Tyson is notorious for when he goes into a merge, he just like, this is my tribe now. It's not a matter of am I leaving? Where's the rest of my alliance? What are they doing at any given point? It's, I don't know if I'm ever getting back to those people again to play with them again. Right now, these are the people I'm playing with, and these are the people I have to focus on. And I think that everybody on that beach, especially because they're all fractured, are really realizing that they're like, in order to move forward in this game, we have to at least include one other person from a tribe that isn't ours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's pretty easy for them to be able to like tell Emily like we
Yeah.
were previously working with these two, so like if we all end up together again, just know that we have to like feel that out, and that's a
Yeah.
hopefully a you're a part of this bigger thing even, but then they could have the conversation, well, am I above them or below them or what, and based on whatever
Right.
happens between now and a possible merge with them. So she's with them. That tribe is sitting pretty. And before we get to Reba, we will talk immunity challenge, because obviously then there will be more Reba to talk about post immunity challenge. First things first on the challenge, it's really hard. It looks so dang hard. And when Jeff like
Yeah.
described it, I didn't fully pick up on exactly what they were about to have to do. And then as they start doing it, I was just like, and once they started doing it, I thought they only had to get the cage up to the beach. And then
Yeah.
when I realized, oh, no, you got to carry it like way up, because the up to the part, the water, the waves kind of help you. You can, time it with that and get some movements. Still difficult, but not impossible. You get a little assistance from Mother Nature, but the getting it up to the beach it seems impossible. It seems like a
Well,
lot to
yeah,
ask folks who have not been eating for 8 or 9 days. And they don't all have good strategies about it either, which is the other
they
thing.
don't.
Reba does eventually switch, but like Sifu's like on like the front corner at one point of his. And I'm just like, dude, like this is kind of why you're on the team, is like this moment. And like you need to be in the middle because you're the strongest and the tallest. So both of those
Yeah.
things require you to be in the middle, which Lulu figured out right away. And like Kaleb was in the middle and was like, I can take the brunt of this. And I think on the other tribe, Drew maybe was in the middle.
I
And while
think
he
so.
might
Yeah.
not be as strong, but he is the tallest, which is again kind of most important if you're all able to lift it, that the tallest person is in the middle, if anything. Did you the are they this definitely stands out as the hardest of the season, physically hardest of the season,
Right.
like most physical exertion. And I don't feel like we get too many of these in any given season. It's pretty
No.
rare that they ask for this big of a physical strength based effort.
So I wasn't like you. I wasn't totally paying attention when they were explaining the challenge, and I looked up, and being somebody who's watched a lot of Survivor, I looked up, saw the cages, saw them like standing, and I was like, cool, it's the snake thing. And then went back to what I was doing. And then when they got in the cage, I was like, they don't have the snake, but they've got poles. And then I was trying to figure out what the poles were for. And then they lifted the cage, and I was like, I have no idea what's going on, but this seems ridiculous. And then it was so nice to see Nulu get that far, like get that much of a lead. Like they were halfway up the beach and the other tribes were still in the water, but it looked like I couldn't have done it. It looked so much more difficult than getting that snake up and over.
The snake looks really hard every time they do it too. It
Yeah.
looks super hard. I don't know exactly how much that snake thing weighs, but it is not. Yeah, that's always one where I'm really worried about injuries. I'm surprised no one gets like thrashed around inside of the cave here. The waves were very calm, so that was working in their favor. But I know somewhere on a beach down in Alabama, Jonathan Young was watching this episode, just like the things I would have done with that cage. Oh my God, just let me at it. Get Jonathan on the challenge, please, and thank you.
Yes.
I can't believe it's over 2. It's so ridiculous. He works. He has all the time in the world, and he's
He
perfect for it.
does.
Okay. Anyways, so yeah, Caleb's really good at basketball and basketball
Yep.
references. We kind of learned both of those things an episode or two ago, but we learn again. Caleb's like legitimately really good at basketball because those shots aren't easy.
No,
Like
in a cage.
out from the cage, a long distance at 3 different heights of rims and hoops. And yeah, they're bigger than a regular basketball hoop, but whatever. It's really hard. And
Yeah.
he goes like 3 for 5 on his shots and they win. And it's a huge celebration. It is only one of the 3 Lulu members winning, but it is still the team named Lulu winning.
Yep.
So it is pretty big over joy. Is Caleb starting to be? This is the second time now out
Hmm.
of what? So this is the 5th challenge, 6th challenge they've done in
Yeah.
total because there's been 1 reward for immunity plus the
I think
like
so. Yeah.
opening one. And then I guess you could add Sweat versus Savvy in there that he did as well. But this is the second of the last 3 challenges where his team is won and he's kind of done all of the parts of it
Right.
and clearly been like, I'm good at the challenge stuff. And so is he painting too big of a target on his back too quickly here?
Not yet. I think that for that very reason, Belo would keep him around because he's going to help them win challenges. And I think him continuing to help them win challenges is going to keep them obviously out of tribal council. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't foresee, really, I don't foresee a situation where we're going to see Nulu at tribal. I think we're more likely to see either like butting of heads on Bello or just not being able to get it done with the dynamic on Reba
Mhm.
before we're gonna see like something happen because they Lulu basically got the a lot of the strongest people
Mhm.
on one tribe.
Yeah, they've got a very good tribe. And I do think it helps him a lot that he got to switch tribes to
Yeah.
kind of lessen the blow of like this guy's kind of the guy that has to do everything for us.
Well,
And
yeah.
how do we feel about it? It's now like we got the new toy that does everything, like amazing. And the
Buzzsaw
first
Louie.
time it's just amazing. The second time it's like maybe a question comes up. And if it happens 3 times in a row, then you start to think, okay, do I want to go to a merge with this guy? Because it seems like he's good at it. Like, yeah, they're not going to keep giving us basketball over and over. We don't
Yeah.
think. Who knows? I don't know. We have two out of the last 3 have been basketball related, so maybe that's the only thing he's good at. We'll find out. But I do have to give him a shout out because we won't otherwise talk about the brief moment of them back on the beach. I didn't ask before. Are you a basketball fan in any way, Tony?
I have watched Space Jam like 50
Okay, that
times.
counts.
Yeah. So, and I
Well,
like Michael Jordan. Like I don't know much about sports that don't come from movies, but growing up I always liked Michael Jordan.
Well, for you and anyone else watching Survivor that doesn't follow the NBA in any way, let me just say that Caleb's NBA references are just out of fucking control so far. And I died when he brought up his like, I don't need to be on the Warriors, which for non-basketball people, the Warriors were like dynastic run for like 3-4 years. They had like 5 of the best 20 players in the league. It was unfair. Some would say others that like them were happy about it. He's like, I don't need to be on that team. Just put me on the Raptors. I'm Kawhi, and that was a reference to Kawhi Leonard got traded to the Toronto Raptors. Shout out Canada
There you go.
in 2019, and they took them to a championship as like the one really awesome guy on a team with just a bunch of good players, but no other great players. So that was Caleb's reference, which was spot on of him being like, I just need my tribe to not like suck. I don't need them all to quit / be horrible at this. Like, I can do some good things here. So shout out to Caleb, who clearly really likes basketball. And then Emily and new Belo gets second, and Emily is overjoyed for the second time in as many scenes of the show at the fact that she does not have to go to tribal. And it's a
Yeah.
really wonderful moment until then they pan over to Sean, who does still have to go to tribal as the one
Yeah, he
Lulu
does.
member who has lost yet again. Any other thoughts on the immunity challenge?
Nope. In all honesty, I when Nulu won, I was so stoked for Kaleb that he didn't have to go to tribal, and that he got Flint, which I also thought was very interesting, that we do a complete tribe swap and like basically shift the tribes and make them new tribes. But then Lulu still didn't have Flint. Like they're like, yeah, no, I know that you're a new tribe now, and we've switched everyone up, but you still don't get fire. Everyone else is fine. So
It,
he's like,
it
okay,
it is a little bit of like salt in the wound to
yeah,
those the to Caleb it's one thing, but because
yeah,
it he's like, well, I was a part of the reason we don't, so like, okay. But the other four that are like, wait a minute, we're the unlucky ones that had the best setup going here, and now we have the by far worst setup going. That's a bummer, but those are
yeah.
the breaks in Survivor. That's the randomness of it all. All right, let's then talk about the losers. Let's talk about Reba. So we didn't discuss them before, so we'll combine here Reba day 8, 9, and then pre-tribal still on day
Yeah.
9, but post immunity challenge here. So the first interesting thing back prior to the immunity challenge to talk about is when they get into their new teams, they are a little suspicious of Sean,
Yep.
and they feel pretty, or at least most of them feel pretty strong and like we still got our 4 and we should stick together. And so D and Julie and Sifu decide when Jay goes walking with Sean to look through Sean's bag. And
Yes.
then they realize he's tied some elaborate knots in his bag. And I've got to say, I can't believe they didn't get caught. I can't believe I don't know
Yep.
how long of a walk you got to take there, Sean and Jay, but it was clearly long. I can't believe that they pulled this off, and I haven't listened to any exit interviews. I'm assuming Sean did them this week, but if he noticed this or anything, but uh, was looking through the bag a good idea before the knots, and then after they discovered the knot situation, was looking through the bag a good idea still?
So Sarah will be very surprised when she hears this because I notoriously hate people going through other people's bags. It
Okay.
just bothers me on like a fundamental level because thinking outside of the game, you're like, you don't do that. And it just weirds me out and I gives me ick. But the more that I've like thought about it over seasons and the more that like I've listened to previous players talk about how really it is an element of the game of like if you don't want people to look through your stuff, you keep your stuff with you at all times. You can't take anything from somebody. It's theirs. You can look in it and see what they have, but you're not allowed to take it and claim it as your own. So I I'm sort of like I've come around to being okay with it. But it took me 45 seasons, truth be told, before I like really was like when it happened this time, I was surprised that I was as okay with it as I was, and then it was because it's a game mechanic. They can't take anything. I liked that when they saw the elaborate knot, they're like, okay, they immediately knew how to workshop it, which was what was incredible to me of just like, this is a complicated knot. Let's replicate it on this bag, and then we'll leave this bag knotted, so then we can replicate it again when we need to close it. I would not think that far ahead. Um, I wouldn't be like the knot looked weird. It looked like he just sort of like shambled the ropes together. So my biggest question about that whole situation, and I went back and like played it through. Why did Sean have the idol in his bag?
He didn't.
He did.
But he did. No, he
Not a
didn't.
hidden one. He had the tribe idol, like the big bird thing.
Immunity idol.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
How did he end up with it? He was on the tribe that didn't have it, and then
Maybe
all of
that like
us.
on the walk back because they brought it. They all like bring that stuff with them because
Yeah.
they don't know exactly what they're going to. Yeah, I actually did see that, but then I totally like decided not to think about it again until you just said that. My only guess in the moment would be maybe on like
They're
the
like,
walk
this is
back
what
to
it
the beach,
looks
they
like.
were
You
like,
hold
hey, like you haven't got to have this before. Like, you want to
it.
carry it or whatever? I don't. Yeah, that is strange that he ended up with that in his bag.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really strange. I hope maybe someone out there answers that question for us. If anyone hears about someone cast member talking about that, please point us in that direction. I I enjoy when people look through the bags because, again, I'm looking for villains out here, and that's a pretty
Yep.
shady thing to do. So I'm all for people doing shady things on this show. Not that any of these three are, you know, looking like good villains to me or anything like that. But I couldn't believe, again, I'm with you. I would not have come up with the immediate strategy of like, well,
Yeah.
we still will do this and can do this, but we'll practice over here and then have our new template. That was impressive all the way through.
Oh
And
yeah.
then they actually do it and they like keep track of the stuff goes in. I would never personally do it because I would never, even if there wasn't elaborate knots, like I would not be confident I could do it in a way that they're not going to find out about it, or that someone else
Yeah.
isn't going to tell and say that I was a part of it before I'm willing to tell and say that, you know, others were a part of it or anything like that. So I'm staying far away, but as a fan, I'm happy every time it happens because it, you know, it could potentially cause friction and disagreement and everything else. So I'm always looking for more of that. Jay, during this walk with Sean, her main purpose of doing it is that she is the one who is not trying to just get Sean out. She
Yes.
wants Sifu out. She wants Sifu out like bad. Like yesterday, like it's
Yep.
just pretty much down to go to tribal council over it. And she doesn't ever correct me if I'm wrong. Does she ever give like a real reason other than
Uh,
she
they think that he
thinks,
has an idol.
yeah, they
So
think he looks for an idol a lot, and so he probably has one. And
so I
that's like the
understand.
basis
Yeah,
of it.
I understood it more the second time I watched it when the girls were talking at the shelter. So what she wanted to do, why she wanted to get Sifu out first, was if they think Sifu has an idol and they get Sean out this vote, and then they go back to tribal and they all vote for Sifu,
That
Sifu's
has
one
to be one
vote
of
takes
them.
out one of the girls.
Yeah.
But as it stands now, if they go after Sifu, but tell Sifu to vote Sean because we're Reba strong, they can get him out and get the idol out while they're still a tight three. So that made much more sense when I heard it that way. Because the first time I listened to it, I was like, I don't understand, other than the fact that she doesn't want to sing that song with him anymore, that why she would want to get him out. Because they totally sang that song again. And
They don't sing anything together, Tony. Let's be real. He occasionally points to Jay to like say one
say
word to
drop
back up or whatever, and she kind of begrudgingly says it. He does heavy metal, screamo, air guitar,
with
which
the
is,
machete.
yeah, it's a it was just as interesting the second time as it was the first time.
Do you know, it's funny because the first, oh yeah. So the first time that it happened, Kaleb was there.
Yeah.
And then Kaleb was like, wow, that's like awesome.
Yeah.
And then the second time it happens, Sean is there.
Yeah.
So the two times that we have seen it happen, it has been a member of Lulu that has
on
been
a show.
present. Yeah. My favorite was Sean's response of, "You're a real lyricist," and then the other people laughing.
Yeah.
I adore Sifu, but like I don't understand what is going on half
He's
the time.
not playing the game.
No,
Doesn't seem
did
like.
do you watch Alone? Like, have you watched Alone, the show?
No, I don't know what that is.
So Alone is the one where there's 10 survivalists, they get dropped in
Yeah,
an
yeah,
area.
okay, yeah, yep.
Yeah. So there's one guy, his name was Biko, and he was like just doing random shit. Like he was there and he was competing, but he was also like a metalhead, and he like wanted to see what was on the other side of his area, but he didn't want to walk there, so he just like stripped down and swam across. He is giving like Sifu is giving me big like Biko energy, and they're both great to watch, and they're both like actively doing what they're supposed to do, but at the same time they're sort of playing on a completely different level than everybody else, but I don't know what that level necessarily is.
They're not playing in a way by being
Yeah.
on the other level, because like Seafood, the whole time all of this is happening, the only thing we see from him is like, yes, he is like looking for idols a bunch, but otherwise we haven't seen him talk strategy at all with
No,
anyone.
except when he kind of like,
Except him and Sean have a conversation where Sifu more or less says like, "Hey man, like I like you, but like, yeah, like we're obviously probably voting you out tonight
yeah,
because like I don't have any reason to like not vote with my original tribes members. But like the way how nonchalant he is about it leaves me like, have you talked about voting ever with, I know you haven't been to tribal council yet, but like, I don't think you've talked about an alliance or voting or anything with anyone on your tribe before at all. I think the only game thing you've done is you've looked for a bunch of idols, but otherwise, like, you're loving being on an island doing Tai Chi at sunrise and like doing stuff with the machete, and like you'll work for the tribe if they're like, fish, or like we need to build this, and you're like, oh cool, like that's part of he's just having an experience versus like playing the game. And doing things like looking for idol is more of like, that's like a part of the experience, is like you look for advantages or whatever. Like that's cool. It's like an activity or whatever. And so, yeah, he's kind of like just not doing a whole lot. And meanwhile, Jay wants him out really bad. I thank you for explaining that, because now it does make sense.
Yeah.
There's only 4 of them and they do believe he has an idol, that like to protect the 3 of them, that they want to actually be a threesome here of an alliance trio, is that like, yeah, we would, if it's us 3, then the order of which we should get these other 2 out is Jay is correct. So I hadn't thought that through. Thank you. Props to Jay then for
my pleasure
thinking that through. But she is team vote Sifu, and Julie is fully like, no. Like, we can't do that yet. We got to stay strong. We got to vote for Sean. And D is kind of the one in the middle, which I find interesting, because I do feel like Julie, as much as she might just think Sean's the better move and the better idea, I feel like D is getting tested a little here, because like Jay was not part of their 4-person alliance up until, the day of this, the yesterday morning at this point of the tribe swap. And it's a very interesting position for Julie and D to be in. Then they're like, well, we had 2 people who we were going to, if we ever had to vote someone out, vote out. But now one of them has come to us wanting to get the other one out on this new tribe. And it's a very interesting situation. So they had to tribal council with it kind of up in the air of like, one person wants Sifu, one person wants Sean. Sean obviously doesn't want him. Sifu's kind of just like, Sean, right? That's what we're all doing, because we're all friends and we're not playing a game or anything. And D is totally in the middle. And we had to tribal to figure out what will happen. And at that tribal, the acting is really good for the first couple of questions, because at least it seems for the first couple of questions, everyone is on board with we've told Sifu we're just going to vote Sean. And the women seem to have come to some consensus before, as much as Julie might still be wavering, that D is at least decided, yes, we will vote for Sifu, and they're all going to vote for Sifu, and they're going to act like it's Sean. And so
they told Sean that too. Like,
yes, and they told Sean, we're going to act like it's you. And Julie especially is like, hey, like she lays it on thick, and like we're going to talk Reba strong over and over and over. We're going to throw you under the bus a little bit, like the whole thing, which was aggressive a little bit. I liked it.
It was aggressive, but I almost feel you need to, because like Sean is going to be looking for anything that's weird, and Sean has his shot in the dark. So if he gets sketched, he can play a shot in the dark, and if he gets safe, then they have to vote Sifu. But why do that if you don't have to?
Yeah. But so it's all going according to that plan for 2 or 3 questions.
Yep.
And then Sean quits. It's his answer starts in, Jeff does if it is you, basically like, do you want to give your final statement? Then give you your chance to like, it sounds like everyone's going to vote you out. So we'll give you your chance to like have your saying and kind of give your last story. And it sounds partway into it like Sean is doing a very good job of that, of like, he touches on what I kind of pondered a little, not knowing his full backstory, but knowing the locations and things of it on our season preview we did, of like, like gay guy in, prominent in the community by being like a school principal, like is in everyone's lives, like in Salt Lake City, and like born and raised there. What was his relationship to the religions of the area and just the culture of the area and everything else? And we get the story here that he was actually raised Mormon, and then, got out of that, and that and everything so far, it's like, this would be, he's given his story and, the things he's proud about. This like sounds like your typical this would be the speech you give, and it's really cool and interesting and everything else. And then it turns from that to out of nowhere, it's like, the culmination of his story is that he comes out as gay, and he felt like he missed a lot of time in his life of being his true self by having been in the religion and the restrictions that put on him, and that he's really really loves his husband, he loves his life now. And like, okay, that's the end of the story. And then it's like, and you know what, Jeff, I love him so much that I need to be with him like now, like right now, Jeff. Like I need to go home and I need everyone to vote me out. And I was just like, whoa, where did this come from? What is going on right now?
And like he said, he'd been thinking about it for a long time, and like, not to discredit Sean's love for his husband, not to discredit what Sean's going through in that moment, but like from everything, and I realize it's an edit, but at the start of the episode, you have him coming back and like desperately trying to like mend fences with Emily and Kaleb to like get that back on track. And then he said, the only thing I can hope for is a swap. And then he gets a swap. And then he's like, I'm with these new people and I'm making inroads, and then we lose. And it seems like they're voting me out. Initially, I thought it was Sifu. Now it seems to really be going my way. And then he quits. Like it felt like in the moment while he talking, he realized that he wasn't getting out of it, that he wasn't going back to camp, and that this was his last opportunity. And so instead he decided to kind of make it his own move, as Jeff said, like engineering a quit, of having them vote for him and asking them to, rather than him doing it anyway, them doing it anyway. And like, I'm annoyed, because if what he said is accurate, and if he's been thinking about it for a while, and if he did want to quit last week, and then we still have Sabaya in the game. Mm-hmm. Like, if you feel like if Sabaya gets voted out, for example, and I don't know, like Jeff could probably say, no, we're not doing that, but like Sabaya gets the votes. The way this whole thing goes, it's a blindside on Sabaya, and he says, you know what? Well, actually, that wouldn't happen, because Jeff would say no, because Sabaya was accurately voted out. But if you're going to quit and you want to quit at a point when somebody can continue on in your place, because that's what he's saying, is like, these are 4 people who really want to play, and I don't want to take that away from them. But like, he also really wants to play.
It feels like it did feel a little like wanting to control his own narrative at the last second, and which sucks if that were to be true. And it was because as he was sitting there, he was like, it seems like I'm actually getting voted out right now. This doesn't seem like acting. He wasn't. I feel very certain, based on the fact that D still is like, nah, fuck that. And D was the swing one of the 3, being like, no, like we said Sifu and we still want to do Sifu. That like, I don't think he was going to get voted out. I think Sifu was going to get voted out
100%. I think that it was Sifu,
especially if he was, Sean eventually votes for D, but if he wouldn't have been in a situation asking to have himself voted for, he would have also voted for Sifu. So like, even if Julie would have still been wishy-washy or whatever, like D and J wouldn't have been, there would have been 3. But yeah, it does. I know it's obviously just pure speculation on our part, and
absolutely,
it's being understanding of the situation that he's in, and given the story he had just told, and having that feeling of like, I lost my childhood or whatever, of not getting to be who I was because of the culture I was in and the environment I was in and everything else, that if you feel like your game crumbling around you and have had that life experience, that you may be like, I don't want someone else to like decide stuff for me again, and I want to kind of last second grab the narrative, so to speak, and orchestrate this and let it be that I chose to go home versus I got voted out, and have that feeling or anything, which like I get, and I hope he gets the same way that I hoped Hannah would, and somewhat did from the little bit of interviews of hers I watched, of like why fans would be you know, the fans that are like just straight up mean about it and like say really shitty, nasty stuff, like just like don't look at replies and stuff on the internet because most of them are fake bots and bullshit anyway. So who cares? But the fans that are just like, this sucks and like this is a really shitty situation that 2 of the 4 people who have went home on the season have quit.
50%.
Yeah, that they would also be understanding of like, I'm sure this is very difficult for them to go through and then to relive and then to deal with any backlash or anything. But it really does suck as fans of the show to be like 2 of the first 4 people quit. And
as fans of the show's going well. Like, it's a great season.
Yeah.
I don't think that these 2 quits necessarily like rob the season of any sort of glory per se.
They helped. Like, the first one helped because the first one kept Emily.
Yeah.
But this Emily, one I think hurt because I think
it would have been Sifu.
Sifu seems like he's got a lot of entertainment to bring, but has been kind of just in the background, and it would have been a blindside that started friction between, you know, a tribe that hadn't had it yet. And I personally, up until he quit, like I was all in on Sean. Again, back to the preview, like middle elementary principal. That's what my mom was. I was like loving him the whole time of just like, you're a proxy for my parent. And I've really enjoyed you and your personality and everything on this. And I feel horrible that you're the one person who has now lost all 4 immunity challenges, the whole thing. And so the first Hannah quitting actually helped the show as far as the entertainment value. I think this one not like ruins the season by any means that, but the better version was him not quitting and Sifu getting voted out, and that starting a bunch of other new stories to work off of.
Or him doing that whole spiel, like say the whole thing still plays out as is, and then Sifu goes home.
And damn, when D votes for him, I have the 2 thoughts of my initial like in the moment thought is like, oh whoa, this could still happen. But then my dumb, like I've watched too many of these shows and I can't help but think about the editing, was like, they would have showed, if this was happening, they would have showed Jay voting for him still, because she was the one that was like all about it. They wouldn't have shown one of the swing people. So I was like, it's too obvious that they start with D still votes for Sifu. And so I don't think he's actually gonna go. But as always, they read the votes in the proper order to make it as interesting as possible. So we do get the random D vote where it's like, whoa, what's going on here? And then you're like, well, Sean did have to vote for someone. But then I was also like, you're allowed to vote for yourself. So like, if you ask all them to vote for you, it's kind of shitty to throw a vote on someone else. Like, D doesn't need to see your name up there. If you want to go home and you want them to vote for you, vote for yourself. What are you doing?
I don't know if you can, though. I don't know if you're can vote for yourself. I don't think so.
I thought that's
I think it's one of those. I thought it was one of those weird rules where you're not allowed to vote for yourself.
I mean, you would know more than I, and definitely I would go off you saying you're right, given the fact that he didn't vote for himself, because I was pretty taken aback by that of like, why wouldn't you?
So
because did Hannah vote for herself? Well, we didn't see the votes there. They did the hand raise, the actual quit.
Yeah, they were like, I vote for.
Does Hannah's get labeled as a quit and Sean's not? And like whoever keeps stats for the chat,
I don't think so.
Survivor.
Jeff acknowledges Sean's as a quit.
He does.
I was listening.
Okay.
I was listening to On Fire this afternoon.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And he said like he felt. So they always do interviews before Tribal of like who you're voting for, and you like it's all individual and like you go in one by one and blah 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 to say who you're voting for at least at the start, so they have an idea of how that vote may go.
Does Jeff have that info before he talks to them?
I don't remember. I feel like
God, he's so impressive with what he digests in the moment.
Yeah.
Like runs.
He said the way that he asked the question, like the way that he asked, like if this is it, like he asks it a couple of times a season. Like he said, it's not a big question. Like it obviously is, like as far as what's your legacy, but it's not a big question as far as Jeff asking it, right? Like it's just one of those things. And he said when he asked Sean that, he felt that in that moment, Sean was like, oh shit, this is me, and took it as if Jeff had sort of like that slip that it was that it was going to be Sean going.
Well, it's like, dude, you've been at the 4 tribals in a row and he's asked this at each one of the person, and it hasn't always been the person going home. Like he's
No,
kind
and I
of
mean,
done it
like,
every time of like, if all of you are kind of saying one name, I'll let that person talk. But yeah, I don't know.
yeah, and my friend Brittany, shout out to Brittany, had a really interesting thought in regards to how Sean had voted as well, for like, because it was kind of weird that he voted for D, out of all the people that were on the beach. Um, but she said, like, could have been that when she kind of mouthed Sifu to Julie, that Sean either heard or saw that. So he voted for D to kind of say D's the one who voted for Sifu.
Yeah.
Like, D and Sifu are the only votes that didn't come at me. D was that one, especially when Sifu asked, "Did you vote for me?" And he said no. If he can't vote for himself, he voted for D, which means one of the three girls voted for Sifu.
Yeah, that which was very smart and adept of Sifu to make sure in that
Yeah,
moment to like, I need this info and
yeah.
I have one moment to get it, like go give him a hug and ask him and do it discreetly because I don't know that anyone else picked up on that.
No, I don't think so.
And probably not. And so yeah, that was good. Sean's gone. Lulu.
Yep.
We still may end up with no Lulu. We still may go 6 for 6. Who knows? Emily and Caleb, look out because
Yeah.
yeah, we're 4 for 4 right now, and we will see where things head to the next week. But for now, let's move into the awards segment. Starting with quote of the episode. Any nominees for the best quote or line of the episode, Mr. Tony?
100%. I sent it to the Survivor player, and she laughed at it, and I was like, it was already the quote of the episode, but now it absolutely is. And that would be Katurah with, I wrote the whole quote down, which was, "You cracked your head, we all got sad, and yay, your head's fixed." Um, Amazing. Like, amazing. And not malicious or anything like that. It was just fucking funny.
Yeah.
Like, I died.
I like that. I will concur that that's the best of the episode. The only other one I had down was Jake's. I got to be ready to jump ship, and thank God I'm a good swimmer. And the Boston,
The
the Boston
laugh.
comes out of Jake heavy. It's always has a
Yeah.
Boston accent, but it gets thicker at different points. And when he's telling jokes, it gets really thick. And the swimmer comes out real
Yeah.
heavy. And then he laughs at his own jokes a lot, and I love that.
Yeah, which is so amazing. I
Yeah.
adore Jake.
He
Like,
dies
yeah,
laughing at his own jokes in confessionals. It's
I
fantastic.
get that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with you. Yeah, gotta have fun out there. And he's also, in between seizures right now, which
Yeah.
so
What the hell?
yeah, which I'm not looking forward to talking about that next week.
No.
But he may be not totally coherent of mind. Not that any of
Yeah.
them are, because they've been starving for 9 days now, but I'm a little nervous about what I don't know. We see something again in the next week on, and same as last time, we see him have a momentary seizure, it seems. And so
Yeah.
we will obviously cover that next week when hopefully everything is as okay as it seemed to be after the first moment of that. Favorite
Yeah.
moment of the episode for you, Mr. Tony Lance?
The first on record, no dialogue confessional. Katurah just shaking her head.
Okay.
After.
Yeah. So after Bruce fakes that he lost
Yeah.
the Flint, Jesus,
Yeah.
dude, that's not the joke to make. And
Oh
it's
my God.
hilarious.
Especially
that-
to Caleb.
Yeah. It's hilarious that Katurah has such a, feelings about that. It's her confessional they use in that moment. And it's not a
Yeah.
like Caleb reaction of, I immediately don't like Bruce because he thought that would be funny for me. Like, what are you doing? Yeah, I had that down in conjunction with the earlier moment of the montage of Katurah's her Bruce escapades, and that whole thing and just that dynamic. I can't wait to watch the fuse get to the end and the bomb to explode on whatever is going to occur between the two of them. I also had down Caleb's basketball reference because again, I'm a basketball junkie, so I'm really,
when he said it, I thought of you.
Yeah.
I knew it was going to show up somewhere in this section.
He's got so many more of those up his sleeve too. I can't wait to hear all of them. But I had to say that Katurah gets it for the shaking the head confessional.
Yeah.
Is that, you really think that's the first time there's been a no dialogue
I
confessional?
can't
I'm sure
think
it's
of
happened before.
I mean, I'm sure it has, but nothing like jumps to mind. It's
Yeah.
usually like somebody saying something and then
And then like a deadpan after it.
a
But yeah, like,
deadpan.
yeah.
But
Okay.
and even though I'm reasonably sure that that shaking her head was in conjunction with my quote, because same like posture, same setting, same everything, but they chose to cut away, do something else, and then come back to it.
Yeah, yeah, it's fantastic. All right,
Yeah.
best gameplay. I was struggling to figure out who I wanted to say for this until earlier when you explained to me the actual logic and smarts behind Jay wanting to get Sifu out, and that makes total sense now to protect those three. So I actually am going to say my best gameplay award would go to Jay, Maya, and to D, who is the convert to the idea of, yeah, if we want to protect the three of us, which is, and it's just the most interesting dynamic too of Jay Maya not realizing that, oh, I wasn't working with those two until now, and they are, hadn't said that, but I'm kind of, I don't know if she's picking up on yet or not, but slowly but surely realizing they weren't really planning on working with me until now. The other two that they were working with are gone. So all of that is interesting, and I actually think really good gameplay from her. Any other good gameplays stand out to you?
I'm gonna go with the rope, with D, with retying the knot on the
Oh yeah,
opposing
yeah, yeah.
bag to then tie it back again.
Brilliant.
And also the like the indexing of everything coming out of the bag and how that was placed in the bag, was just all top notch. And then of course, like you said, J Maya, and being able to play that all through and knowing this is the opportunity where we have a buffer because next week we potentially won't if we get rid of Sean. Um, yeah, I mean, other than that, and I guess Drew and Austin like immediately recognizing that they need to make inroads with Emily before Brando and Kendra have the opportunity. So there was kind of like a really standout moment in each tribe this week, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. Um, As I was thinking of other good gameplay moments, I remembered something I thought about earlier in reference to Survivor and the challenge, and I want to ask you about it, but I will save it for the very end of this. So everyone stick around for
Deal.
this huge revelation that I had. Yeah, big question that I've got to ask you in a few minutes. Worst gameplay of the episode. Did any stand out horrible gameplay? My award
Sean
would go
quitting.
well, yeah, Sean quitting. That wins. Sean quitting. Bad gameplay, bad move. Asking
Yeah,
everyone to vote for you. Not a good strategy. Saves Sifu from getting my vote because his see again, it's edited way, and they obviously when they're editing this know that he's not ultimately going home and they should maybe focus a little more on Sean. I don't know, it doesn't seem like he's trying very hard to stay in the know.
stay.
And
Yeah.
so I would do a little more if I was him in that situation. But yeah, Sean gets the worst gameplay. Obviously, who is your episode MVP? We came to an agreement for the first time ever last week, and I'm
It's
interested to
true.
see if we do again this week because I, at this exact moment, don't know who I'm about to say is my MVP. So you go first.
I'm gonna give it to Katurah because she had my quote of the night. She had my moment of the night. She was the first one to go beyond surface level conversations with Kaleb and really give him an inroad. And considering he is the Canadian on the season and he's one of my favorites, I appreciate that. I like that they're working together. And it really was just a good episode for showcasing how she's playing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're back to back. We're
Boom.
yeah, I'm gonna go with you because when I don't have most episodes I have like it's obvious and I'm just kind of like, oh, of course it's this person. I don't even have to like look back at my notes. But a little behind the scenes here, how I do my notes is after I have on my notes, basically writing out everything that's happened in the episode. And then when I go to fill in my awards for each episode, I bold any quotes or moments
Right.
or gameplays or whatever, any things that would be a factor or a nominee for a vote. And so when I'm ever torn on the MVP, I always just scroll through and like who shows up the most and any bolded things. And Katurah shows up by far the most in the items that I bolded to be nominees for things this episode. So we're back to
Perfect.
back. We're getting on the same page with what the MVP means. That's wonderful. All
There
right.
you go.
So those are the awards. Let's head to the final portion of this pod, the power rankings predictions, and my new theory / revelation for Tony.
Yes.
Power rankings first before my riveting question that I'm building up way too much. Although I am really excited about putting it to you and seeing what your thoughts are on it. But first, our power rankings. Has there been any change to your power rankings from last week into this week with the new tribes and everyone in their new spots?
Yes.
Okay, let's hear it.
So I have Kaleb, Emily, D, Katurah, Kelly.
Okay. Say that one more time. Kaleb, Emily, D, Katurah, Kelly.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. We continue to be 4 out of 5 of the same. And it's always like a different person that we don't necessarily have the same. Which were you reading that 5 to 1 or 1 to 5, or is that just your top 5?
1 to 5. It's kind of like top 5 that moves around a little bit, but like I tend to write it down, and then while we're talking, I sort of reform it into a 1 to 5.
So you have D at the top or Kaleb at the top?
No, Kaleb, then Emily, then D, then Katurah, then Kelly.
I have D at the top still for, I believe, the third, if not the all 4 weeks at this point. I like where she has ended up in this new group. And even though, yes, she's now made an enemy going into the next episode, I'm not concerned about it.
She made the best enemy she could make.
Yeah, she made the enemy that I think is going to be pretty easy to either flip to her side somehow, some way, or it won't matter, and it'll all be fine. And then I've got Kaleb and Emily, who I think went from not a good situation to really good situations in this episode. And then I'm keeping Kelly on there, and I'm adding Jake, who was not on it before, but he seems to be so far. Every time we see him, he's getting along really well with the new person, and then a new person is liking him, and not making big moves or being targeted, but like just there's another person that Jake likes, and now he's like 3 for 3 or 4 for 4, and like every time we see him in a one-on-one scenario, it's someone being like, "Oh, I hadn't considered before," or "This is the first time," but like, yeah, that's we should work together, whatever. So I think he's got to be on there as well. I don't have any big prediction questions for you next week, so I guess we could go with the tried and true. Who do you think ends up at Tribal Council next week? And or who is the most entertaining if they end up at Tribal Council next week?
Most entertaining, Lulu. Most likely, Reba.
Most entertaining, Lulu, because I would say most entertaining would be Reba is the 221 tribe, right?
No, Reba
or Belo. Yeah, so I think Belo's the most entertaining, most interesting and entertaining.
So I'm going based off of the Bruce and Katurah
Oh yeah, you're showdown. Right. That we do. I don't know though,
because Bruce is starting to catch wind of it.
Do we want that to actually? Do we want to drag that out as long as we can? Because it reminds me, it's a very different dynamic to some degree, or like the reasons they don't like each other, or whatever. Actually, it isn't honestly that different than who was Gabler's nemesis on his tribe? What was her name? Ellie. Yeah. God, Ellie was great. Again, we need more Ellies around again. I had high hopes Emily could be more of an Ellie than turning out to be an Emily. It's still amazing, but just, again, not the villain that I was hoping for. But there is a little bit of that going on there, a more extreme version, honestly, of that, like a little more forthright with the disdain. And I liked that took a couple episodes to ultimately play out, and when it did happen, I was like, damn it, I wanted it to go further. Like I wanted that to hang around for even longer. So I'm more down for the one of them deciding, and by one of them, obviously Katurah deciding we got to lose, and like talking, 2 episodes from now being like, Kaleb, hey, we should lose, right? Like we need to get rid of Bruce before a merge or anything. Like we should lose. I want that scenario to happen, and to get a little more every day on the beach that those two have to be on the beach together is a day of entertainment for us. So sorry to her that I'm rooting for that, but I'm here for entertainment. So I'm hoping for Belo to go. I want to see Emily be put in that swing position and get to use all of the new skills that she has acquired / grown into on this season. And just, the kind of obvious the team that is the most mixed up would be the most interesting to see what happens to them. All right. I've got a random thing to ask you now. I will ask you now. So, uh, this is mostly related to Survivor, although it is going to start with a challenge reference. So, for anyone listening, this is still very Survivor related. On Survivor, they are notorious for being an amazing operation. And one of the many things that they do really amazingly is they try to make everything as fair as possible by like adjusting for height or weight on different types of obstacles and things. And on Challenge USA 1, that was one of a plethora of deserved criticisms from cast members, most notably Tyson, because he had the biggest platform to do so. But all of them were in unison, like, hey, like we didn't know the rules, things weren't fair. And like one of many things they pointed to is like on Survivor, they like would do things like, I'm 6'2" and that's 5'6", and this involves looking over a fence. So they would like adjust that to be fair or whatever. And I was like, that makes sense. You should do that. And now on Challenge USA 2, they have been doing that repeatedly over and over. And, I and many others have been like, good job, challenge.
Yep.
That's really wonderful. I had a random thought though last night during the USA 2 finale when the first thing they had to do was carry the 4 big chests up a little hill, and they say the weights of the chest are proportional to your body weight. And at first glance I'm like, okay, like that's fair or whatever, I guess. But then the first thought I had is it is fair, but it isn't like some 100% fair thing, because
Right.
it is still like a 5'6", 140-pound person can still bench press 225 pounds. And it's like cool
Right.
as hell. But you see it happen all the time with like short athletes that are like, I can bench press 3 times my body weight or whatever, squat like 4 times my body weight. And it still is probably a little bit of a disadvantage that someone like Fessy is like, well, I weigh 50 pounds more than all the other dudes. And so like now my shit's heavier, but like they're just as strong as me. Like they work out just as much, whatever. So I started to
Yeah.
think like, is it ultimately that fair? But the other thing I thought of that then came up when watching the Survivor episode was, you know what they don't adjust for? They can't adjust for? What about when Brando gets to dig the hole underneath the log and squirm out of the log? And on the other side, like Caleb or Bruce has to do it. And it's like, that's, you're not adjusting for that. And like, there's actually a lot of times on Survivor or the challenge or anything where like being small is good. How many times on Survivor is it like when you referenced earlier, they're in a cage or they have to move through some obstacle course or whatever, where you're like, you don't want to be tall. You don't want to be big. You want to be really small and be able to maneuver between this stuff. And they don't adjust for that. Be like,
True.
small person, you have 3 extra wires in your obstacle course to get through because Caleb's head's going to hit the one and yours isn't or whatever. And so I started thinking that maybe I'm not as fully on board with the, like, you've got to adjust everything. The outside of the height one is the ones that make the most sense to me. And I think is actually truly making something 100% fair of like, if you need to look over something, we give, on the Challenge USA, they had the little trampoline to jump over something. And they were like, we made it all so you all have to jump the same height to be able to see over whatever. I think height ones like in that manner are the only ones I think are actually 100% making something fair. And I think there's an argument on both sides of pretty much everything else of like, are you actually making it more fair, or are you just sliding the scale of like, who is it most closer to being fair for or unfair for?
I would
crazy for this.
No, I would extend beyond height. I would also say the ones where you're not lifting something, you're just like holding something. Would also be like proportional to your weight. Like that makes sense. Or like there's somewhere you have to stand on a certain thing. But if you're like D and you got big toes, then like she could curl them around that thing.
The one challenge where I've seen them
Like
do a couple
stand.
times in Modern where they're in the water on the like triangle thing with the little line on either side and you're saying, I have really big feet and really crooked big toes. So I quite literally couldn't stand on that thing without it moving for 1 second. I would be like, I lose because of my feet. Like, this is bullshit. And I don't see you adjusted this for my messed up big feet over here, Jeff. So I don't know. I've been thinking about that as I watched these couple episodes. It's like, you can't actually make all of these fair. And I might even start to reconsider some of the one adjustments that have been made before and be like, are all of these actually making it more fair? Or are they just sliding who might have an advantage or who is more probable to have an advantage or not? And yes,
Yeah.
this is ultimately just me feeling bad that I was like, how is Fessy losing this first fucking challenge? God damn it.
Well,
We
I
had a
mean,
bad,
like,
bad night fan club last night.
I look at it. So for example, like the advantages sometimes aren't really advantages either. Like, I will always go back to Malcolm's first season. He got an advantage where he could restart the immunity challenge if he lost, and it one where you have like a ball bearing and it's sitting on a piece of wood, and you've got the two connectors on either side, and you're putting pressure on it to keep it there. But just as a person, when Malcolm gets nervous, his hands shake. Like he shakes when he
It's
gets
like, this
nervous.
doesn't help me. I'm
So
not
he
going
said,
to win
like,
it because I get a second try.
I could have 50 do-overs.
Yeah.
When it gets to a certain point, my nerves are going to get the best of me and I'm not winning this. Like, it does not matter. So he won the advantage in the game, but the advantage in the game didn't really ultimately matter because of what the game happened to be. There was no way for him to win that just because of how he responds to anxiety. So it's those ones are really interesting where like the argument can be made for like when Brandon passed out, so they put him in the shade with water. So then they were
Last
like, well,
season, Brandon for,
yeah, yes, sorry, yeah. So last season's Brandon,
Yeah.
so that everybody got shade and water. So there was another one, I think it was on 41. Voce was talking about it where they all got sunscreen because one person needed sunscreen. So then everybody had to get sunscreen because that made it fair for everyone.
Yeah.
That they weren't dealing with sunburns later. So in that sort of thing, like totally get it. I like as far as like those sort of things and removing a definitive advantage and sort of and trying to level the playing field, I understand. But I agree with you. Like there are people who like I've got a fair amount of upper body strength, but like I'm 5'4", but and lift a fair amount just because I can. So I wouldn't have as much of an issue potentially as somebody who could be taller than me, but might not have as much upper body strength.
Yeah. It's yeah, I don't know. It's just been an interesting thing. I've been thinking about that. I still applaud obviously Survivor for trying their best to make it as fair as possible. And most of the time it works, but I previously had held the full opinion of like, yeah, this is bullshit that the challenge doesn't attempt to do any of this stuff and like they should, and it's all good. And then I started realizing that there is no way to do it for everything in the right way every time, and that maybe some of the ways they're doing it actually backfire in some small ways. And it was mostly watching Brando easily crawl his way out of the under the thing. I was like, well, yeah, damn, there's no way to fix that one. You need a
No, but
really
they chose too,
a
right?
really skinny person, like just
Because they had Kelly and they had Julie, so they got their skinniest person to do it.
Yeah.
But if you like, what if you managed to fluke a tribe of all Jonathan Youngs?
Yeah.
Like
Well, and
nobody
just
is getting
even
out of that.
Kelly and Julie are, skinny fit women, but like Brando is a twig at this point.
Yeah.
Like he is you do not have to dig a very big hole to push him through that thing, as they did not have to. But yeah, so there's advantages everywhere for all different types of people and all different types of settings, which is the beauty of Survivor. So
Totally.
we will end on that. Just anything else coming from Challenge fandom this weekend or in the next week, or just the episode recap eventually, and then I'm assuming you guys are obviously moving right into 39 coverage as well when that kicks off.
Yep. So I think we're just putting the finishing touches on the 39 breakdown, and then we've got recording the recap tomorrow, so it'll go out early next week, and then right back into recording again once the two shows that the most people watch when it comes to reality television are on the same night at the same time.
Yes, which I already I'm sorry, Survivor fans, but obviously this might be Survivor Historian, but it's on the Challenge Historian feed. And this week it was the first week where it was like, okay, not allowed to be on Twitter because Survivor's coming second. And that was when I also realized that I was like, oh, I forgot Survivor's 90 minutes too. And when I queue it up an hour later than I otherwise would have, it's like, damn, okay, I'm in for a later night. But in the future, thankfully, we don't try to record right after Survivor on
Yes,
Wednesday.
very
So
true.
I will in the future be watching Survivor first thing Thursday mornings because I will be podcasting after the challenge episodes on Wednesday night. So anyone listening, feel free to DM me or Tori or Tony. Geez, now I'm really on the challenge stuff about Survivor, but don't do it
Yes.
till the next morning from here on out the rest of the season. Or I just won't look at my messages until the next morning. That's probably the better way to go about it. All right, wonderful. We will be back next week sometime, again, as always, sometime between Thursday and Tuesday after the episode airs. I think we'll be able to get in a pretty good rhythm and maybe making Fridays more often than not.
Yeah.
So you'll hopefully have them over the weekend more often than not. But it was wonderful chatting Survivor as always, Tony. I look forward to
Likewise.
checking in again next week.